Chris and I'm Nate. Can you all hear me in the back there? Because you guys are way, 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 way back. Next year, come up and get here early so you can get a seat up here.
There's speakers in the back.
Oh, is there? All right. I'm honored that the lady that's going to speak tonight asked me to introduce her tonight. And she asked me last night, and today I think she asked me, she said, so have you thought about what you're going to say? And I'm like, no, not really. And I really haven't thought about it. I've tried. I got clean with Kelly. She had, I think, 8 months more than I did. And we traveled everywhere. Back when I got clean, Narcotics Anonymous was kind of small. And if there was a function going on somewhere out of town, there'd be a group of us and we'd go to that function. She drugged me into service. We would go on these, it used to be public information, now it's public relations. And we would go to these things and I'd be like, okay, I'll go. And I had no idea what people were talking about, because when you hear about the politics of Narcotics Anonymous, it's foreign language when you're brand new. You're like, what? But I went. But the neat part of it is she was like a sister to me. And there was a bunch of us, but bottom line is me and Kelly have been friends since I've been clean, and she'll tell you that. We text each other a lot. We kid around a whole lot. But her story, she's going to talk from her heart, because that's the way Kelly does things. She tells it like it is. That's the way Kelly is. She ain't going to beat around the bush about it. She has an awesome message. I love her to pieces, and she knows I do. I love her husband, too. I don't have a whole lot, Kel, because you got an awesome story. Thank you for asking me to do this. I'm going to shut up before I cry.
I got my tissue. Okay, my name's Kelly. I'm an addict. That's my favorite part. It helps me feel comfortable, familiar. Okay, so here we are in Ripley, West Virginia, right? I traveled around a lot early on. When I first got clean, there was 2, maybe 3 meetings a week, and so if you wanted to get plugged into NA and get an NA message, you had to go to Greater NA as a whole, So on the weekends, there was one event in Georgia, and there was one event in Michigan, and there was one event in, wherever. But when it came to West Virginia, it was never West Virginia. It was wild, wonderful, West by God, Virginia. Yeah. And I'm like, what's with that? What the heck is that, This convention is, this is my must-do. I come here twice a year. I love this place. And I don't know if everybody does it different, But for me, my favorite meeting is the fireside meeting. I'm there, unless it's raining, Friday and Saturday night. And actually, I was there last night. But Friday and Saturday night, that's my favorite meeting. For some people, it's a meditation meeting. For others, I'm almost always in a workshop all the time. I just love every minute here. And I try to get as much out of it as I can. I got a lump in my throat already. Yeah, exactly. Chris did it. Yeah, I was choked up when he was up here. Okay, so, but I come here to get my batteries filled. And I heard somebody at the fireside meeting last night say, I don't even know what you people are talking about with these batteries. I'm just trying to get the batteries. Which I thought was hysterical, because it was like, I know what he's talking about. So I would invite you to enjoy or at least notice what they're talking about when they say wild, wonderful, West by God, Virginia. This place is awesome. There is magic here. Look around. The trees, 2 lakes, or pond, whatever you want to call it. It's just gorgeous here. The moon tonight, there's just a vibe, a feeling here that when I come here, it fills my soul. It's not so much, I'm hoping my voice will stop crackling. It's not so much, it is. It's the convention, it's the people. I feel enormously loved here. But it's also the place, there's just something here. So I would invite you to tap into that, pay attention, and take it with you. And when you come back, bring a newcomer, That's what we did. We have 7 people in our room. Half of them are newcomers, half of them are sponsees, and people that I've known for decades, and as it should be, I love that. I love that. Probably won't get much sleep tonight, but it's a good time. And that's what it's about. That's what I was taught, right? That's what I was taught. Okay, the other thing I wanted to say, the theme of this convention is no matter what. And, I'm sure people have been talking about it. There was even one of the workshops, no matter what club, Now, the third tradition tells us that the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop using, right? No matter what club means it's a commitment. It's like the third step. I'm committed to this thing. No matter what, I'm going to stay clean. I'm not going to use no matter what, No matter what, I'm going to stay clean. No matter what. And I had a dream this week. I went to sleep, about 4 or 5 nights ago. I was thinking about, how cool that's, that, because I didn't know that was the theme. And I thought, no matter what, that's a cool theme. That's a cool theme. 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up, people screaming at me. A room full of people screaming at me. I'm like, wow, what the hell, And when I kind of focused a little bit, they were screaming, no matter what. I'm like, what is that? So, anyway, it was a very strange dream, but I like the theme of that because it helps me, I have stayed clean. I know people whose kids have died. I know people who've been through divorces, bankruptcies, stuff hits the fan, life shows up, and, if you're not working the program, you might not make it. And this program, I believe, in my personal opinion, is the 12 steps. When I say program, I don't mean showing up at a convention. I don't mean getting all the right phone numbers. I do not mean, going to all the meetings, fellowship. That's good. All of it is good to get plugged in, I'm talking about working the steps. That's the program. That's what the program is. So no matter what, I'm working the program. Every single day of my life, I'm doing this deal every day. So I love that topic because, sometimes, it's just me and God, and I can line up 100 people and talk at 100 people and, and it's not even getting in. It's not even penetrating. And that lonely spot, that lonely time, dark night of the soul, whatever you want to call it, that shit'll take you out, So unless you're working the program, I believe I'm not going to make it. And I do this program every day. I don't ride the coattails of what I did last month or last week, I'm doing my daily program on a daily basis. Daily, I have a handful of things that I do, and maybe I don't fulfill those handful of things 100%, but I'm doing most of them literally every day. To get started, I was born in California. I didn't get clean there, but the reason why that's important is because we moved around a lot. And we were always going whitewater rafting, going to the ocean, going to the redwoods, going to the mountains, whatever, just going, because that's just how California people are, just always moving. And we moved every single year, So I grew up with this mentality of, okay, let's go, And so I was just addicted to the excitement right out of the gate, And the other thing that's important about my childhood is that my father, I guess the best way to say it is he was a big fish in a small pond. And so the vision I have of myself is me jumping up and down going, look at me, look at me. And so I was always trying to get his attention, later your attention, anybody's attention, and I had to, prove something. I learned to be a performer, I was always trying to achieve something to get attention, so whereas you're putting in 70%, or whatever you're doing, I have to put in my 200% just to be equal, to feel equal to you, so it wasn't like a competition with anybody, better than, less than, none of that. It was just I didn't feel like I was enough. So the message I absorbed was I'm never going to be enough, I'm not enough, I'm never going to be enough. And so before I ever picked up, I'm like go, 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 and trying to be more than, greater than, bigger than life, so that's what how I started out. The first time I used, I was 12 years old. I was raped, passed out, woke up the next morning, and somehow told myself that it was all my fault, that I did it wrong, that if I had used right, if I had been able to handle my whatever that I was doing, that wouldn't have happened. And so I decided that I was just going to get better at that. And so I didn't tell a soul about that event for years. And so I proceeded to, get really, really great at using. That was at the end of my 5th grade year. By the end of that same summer, I was sneaking out at night, running around with married men. My boyfriend was a dealer, and so therefore I was dealing. And, I went hard and fast all the way, jumped in, 200%. I was a kid. My boyfriend was over twice my age, just gotten out of jail, been to jail a couple times. And, so I just, I took this disease and sunk right into it, just jumped right in. In school, school was always easy for me. I was raised to be very academic, and so I was always on honors list and dean's list and all this other stuff. I was raised to be very sports oriented, and so again, overachieving. I was always all-star on the all-star team, and and doing all this, and the reason why that's important is because I learned to, that little, what is it, bug or lizard, the chameleon, I learned to do that, anywhere that I went, I kind of fit in, I morphed, I kind of became who you were, So when I was around the jocks and the geeks, I could fit in, and when I was around the dealers and, later the bikers and the pimps and prostitutes, I always fit in, And I just moved. I just got used to moving, just constantly, where's the party? Let's go, let's go, let's go. I was with you as long as you were entertaining me. And when it wasn't fun anymore, I was moving on. I was just as addicted to the lifestyle as I was to the drugs. That was as hard or even harder to give up. I was so addicted to that roller coaster ride. I mean, if I didn't have a story, if I didn't almost die, almost get busted, almost something, I didn't think I had a good time, and it was your fault. And I was going to move on, and I was moving on to a different town, a different, group of people, I mean, my disease took me all over the place, By now I was in Ohio, so I went back to California, Canada, Washington. I mean, I was just all over the place, And I just, I used people, moved on. I was looking for the rush, and I didn't care if it came from the drugs or the event, the excitement, I like, where's the party? Let's go, let's go, let's go, And, I wanted to burn something. I wanted to beat up something. I wanted to, you were stealing cars. I wanted to steal a school bus, And I did. Not very inconspicuous, I must say. Little 13-year-old girl driving a school bus, let's go. No, not very inconspicuous. So yeah, I was looking for the ride all the time, and I was always the instigator, and my parents eventually decided I was just crazy. They thought I was nuts, and they locked me up. And so the hospital ran all kinds of tests on me, and they found out I had this thyroid disease. And they're like, oh, thank God it's the thyroid. And it's the friends, and it's the this and the that. And, they were just really good enablers. They were good at, blaming somebody. Thank God it's not our darling little girl, And, of course, I knew. About a year after that, I ended up in treatment. And I was so young, and this was so long ago. They didn't know what to do with me, so they're just like, prop her up in the corner and, don't move. And, but some of that stuff from treatment kind of sunk in. I heard about the disease of addiction. I didn't understand a whole lot of what they were talking about, didn't want anything to do with it, had no intention of ever getting clean. Really, really, really believed that I was going to die young, just burn out hard and fast. And everybody around me thought the same thing. I always heard, Kelly, you have so much potential, right? I mean, I'm sure we've all heard that. And, those same people would say that they were convinced they were going to read about me in the newspaper. So I was a wild child. So I went through treatment, and that seed was planted, I guess. I didn't stay clean for even a minute when I got out, and proceeded to do my thing. I had no sense of me whatsoever. I was who you wanted me to be. I was who I was with at the time. I dressed, acted, looked like, talked like whoever I was around, and I was just there as long as I could get what I wanted. My favorite drug was more. My second favorite drug of choice was yours. I didn't care what it was, I had some preferences, but, hey, I'll do that if, and I didn't understand the concept of, using half of something, leaving half of a line or something, or, we'll save this till later. It's like, no, we're going to do that right now, And I just wanted to be numb, stoned out of my mind, checked out. I didn't get high to be social practically from day one. I got high to be numb and to check out, and that's where I wanted to live, I didn't even care if I woke up. I didn't care. The whole rape thing from, day one, that became an event that happened quite often. I'm sure a lot of women in the room, could relate to that. That was just a price I paid. That was a consequence. And it sucked, but, there you have it. That was just, what I did, one of the many things that I did to get high. I ended up, I was in and out of jail and running around, getting kicked out of all kinds of things, and, I was all over the board, so meanwhile, I'm on honors roll, I'm on all-star, and, I'm running, getting expelled, getting suspended, going to jail, I'm just, all over the board. I end up facing this longer term. They were going to file charges against me as an adult. And I was facing long-term jail, 12 years, 8 years, whatever it was. And I happened to get this attorney who he later became the director of a treatment center. So he recognized in me the disease of addiction, in this young kid. And so he helped me out. And long story short, I ended up getting my little unmanageability slip, that I had to do. I had to go to meetings. And this was, quite a while ago. NA was not seen as legitimate yet. We didn't have a text. In Columbus, as I said, we had 2, maybe 3 meetings a week. And so I got sent to some meetings and other kind of meetings, and I called somebody from treatment, and I'm like, I hate these meetings. I don't like them now any more than I liked them back then. And he's like, well, there is this one thing. It's brand new. It's called NA. I'm like, okay, I guess. I don't know. It sounds kind of weird. Narcotics Anonymous. What is that, And because I did anything, and that's, very specific. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll try it. And when I went to I don't remember exactly my first meeting. I just remember the beginning, and it felt different to me. Now, like if you look around, there's a ton of young people. But back then, there was me, at least in Columbus, Ohio. There was nobody my age. There was nobody that looked like me. I mean, most of the people that were in our program were men, middle-aged, white guys, not many women, no young people, almost no colored people. They just all, and I'm like, I don't know about this. I don't know if it's going to work. But what was interesting was, I was used to using with people twice my age, and so they looked kind of familiar. These were people that looked like I would use with them, I was comfortable there. I kind of got and I was more comfortable with guys anyway, but I felt okay there. And what happened was I didn't have a car, and so people would, they offered to pick me up. And, back then we had just a few meetings, and, our big meeting was, 10, 15 people, I mean, we had a bigger meeting, but that, that was kind of people from other fellowships showed up to support us. And, so our actual Narcotics Anonymous members were, just a handful. And so we recognized the newcomer, we could pick you out because you weren't here last week, and so we knew who you were. And, they offered to pick me up, and take me, for rides and stuff. And so I was introduced to the meeting before the meeting and a meeting after the meeting, that thing. And, they would go around and pick up a carload. Everybody showed up with a carload of addicts, Nobody showed up empty-handed. It was just kind of like this unwritten rule. And, so I was one of the people they picked up. And, and afterwards everybody went out for coffee and pie. Why coffee and pie? I don't know. I'm like, can I get a cookie? Or, no, coffee and pie, That was the thing, coffee and pie at Jerry's, So we did this this ritual, and I had no intention of staying clean, none. But something started seeping in, seeping in the cracks, seeping in my defenses, and it was just getting under my skin. Now, I was showing up to get my my slip sign, which, I was sneaking to NA because I felt more comfortable here, and I was supposed to go to someplace else, and, so I had to get special permission from the judge so I wouldn't have to sneak like that, and so that was kind of interesting. And now the slips say, Narcotics Anonymous, but at any rate, so I started to feel a little bit more comfortable, and that meeting before the meeting and the meeting after the meeting helped me get it, in part, because, I would talk to these people about this stuff, and then they would say, well, if you're really interested, we can go to this event, and by now I'm starting to kind of maybe be open to staying clean, and, the book talks about degradation, desperation, and that stuff, and and there was people in the program, or people in the meetings, some of the bigger meetings that were supported by many fellowships at the time. There was one church that had like every fellowship you could imagine in this one church on the same night, and so there was hundreds of people there, and we just, it was just like a big mishmash. So, and people would come up to me at that particular meeting and say, you're too young, you couldn't possibly have hit your bottom, you don't belong here. It's just a phase. I was going to shoot somebody in the face if they told me it was a phase again. It's like, no, it wasn't a freaking phase, And, it's like I belong here. I have earned my seat here. And so it kind of gave me like a defensive, stance. It made me want to prove to them, kind of, that I belong here and that I could make it. So that resentment kind of, helped me stick around. But the meetings before the meetings after the meetings, and suddenly I'm getting an interest, and they're like, well, there is this greater NA thing, and if you're really interested, there's an event this weekend, And when I would go to these events, it was like after a while, 3 out of 4 weekends out of the month, we were going somewhere. We were getting plugged into greater NA, and when I went to these places, people were talking about the concept of this disease, because we had no text. They were talking about this disease, and I'm like, it was bigger than me. It was bigger than Columbus, Ohio. It was bigger than just Kelly getting clean, staying clean. There was something there. There were these big ideas that I kind of latched onto, and I'm like, wow, this stuff is really cool. And there's something just feeding me about this stuff, and it was all new. It was fresh. It just felt kind of cutting edge, and it was just, and these people, they were writing the book. They were writing our literature, and that's why we were going to all these events. They were editing, and they were, going over this stuff. And so these people became my teachers, and I would go out of town, and I would see them at different, different locations and different places, and it was, I'll be forever grateful. I mean, I think I got clean at the coolest time ever. I pray that everybody in this room believes that same thing. It was just so cool. I mean, think about, if you're in some kind of outreach area and you're thinking, man, I wish I was someplace else, you might want to pause for a moment, because I saw Columbus grow from 2 to 3 meetings. It was like off the chart cool as hell when we got that 7th meeting. And a part of me was like, okay, we got a 7th meeting. And, somebody else said, no, you don't understand. We now have a meeting every single night we can go to. We can go to our own meeting every single night. That's cool stuff. We can keep our newcomers clean every night of the week. And watching that growth, watching that burst, it just felt like watching the bottom of a mushroom cloud. And then all of a sudden there was a huge explosion. I mean, when I first came in the program, there was somewhere between 600 and 1,800 meetings globally in the entire world. And Columbus has over 100 just in Central Ohio. When NA started to grow in Central Ohio, we would go to these. It was just bursting. I mean, it literally tripled in like 18 months. It was just bursting because of the book, and we would go and support some of these outreach meetings. And today they call them outreach. Back then it was just how we did our meetings. We'd go an hour here, an hour there. I mean, that was just our way of life. This is how we go. And all this stuff that we did on the weekend, by the way. And, the outreach meetings, that just fed me, because I was like, let's go. Where's the party? Let's go, And so getting that plugged in totally helped me. I loved that, because it's like, where's the ride? Where's the fun people? Where's the excitement, And that's what I was looking for. And I found it here. I was looking for that, and I found what I was looking for. And people would take me on the weekends and to these outreach meetings. And, I didn't think I had anything to offer. Now, back then, 30 days clean, you're an old-timer, And if, as an old-timer, it's your responsibility to get plugged in. And, so I was a GSR and a secretary and, I forget what, a PI chair and, all this other stuff. And, right out of the gate. But we did this. We committed to some outreach meetings, and one of them was an hour. A friend of mine and I, a couple of people, we'd throw newcomers in the back seat and, drive up north to Mansfield to this treatment center. It was one of them that we committed to supporting. And at this treatment center, there was a woman there. She was a little bit larger and, looked very angry. And, at the time they had people in detox and gowns and, so she just looked like she had sharp edges and, don't touch me, don't talk to me, that kind of thing. I totally blew that off, ignored it, and went up and gave her a great big hug and said something, we love you, we need you, keep coming back, whatever, And a couple years ago, she was the Ohio spiritual speaker at the convention, and she talked about that. She didn't know I was in the audience. She talked about that, and she said that affected her. It affected her because at the time in her life, she was around people that didn't want to talk to her. She was around people that didn't want to touch her. And so for me, I was having fun. I was getting plugged in. I went to some outreach meeting, gave some woman a hug. Well now, isn't that special? I'm just going to take a little break for a minute. Gave some woman a hug. And I went about my day. But to her, because nobody wanted to talk to her, nobody wanted to touch her, she remembered that. And a few weeks later, after she got out of treatment, she went to her first Ohio convention. And that hug, with whatever kind words I said to her, touched her, combined with getting plugged into that was her first event outside of treatment. Blew her mind, and she was talking about that when she was speaking. And you just having that come around full circle, so cool. So cool. So I didn't think, I had a few months clean, I gave some woman a hug. Why am I doing this? I gave some woman a hug and I went about my day. I didn't mean to change anybody's life with this hug. But it kind of blows my mind that, if you think you have nothing to offer, you're so wrong, because we can help change people's lives. We can affect people, and you don't even know what that little effort can do. What that little effort to do. All I was doing is getting plugged in, having fun, going about my day, working my program. And it took me a while, by the way, to really get plugged. I didn't get it. I didn't. Like I said, I didn't really have any intention of staying clean, getting clean. And when I first decided to get clean, I didn't understand how do you do that? How do you put together a day? I don't understand, this I couldn't do it, and I struggled with it. I came in, I got out of jail in January, and it took me a few months. I kind of, I don't know, maybe. I struggled with it for a few months, and then I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I decided to stop trying to do it, and I would commit to not using until lunchtime. And then I'd recommit to not using until dinner time. And then I'd say I'm not going to use till after the meeting. And then I'd promise myself that I'd use tomorrow. And somehow that monkey chatter in my head just kind of settled down. It's like, okay, I'm okay with that. And, and eventually I remember putting together like a week without thinking about using it. It's like, oh my God, I did it, and I didn't even notice. But it was hard, it was hard. I couldn't do it just for today. So I had to break it down, I'd commit and then I'd recommit for another couple hours. And I started to get this thing, the light was starting to shine in my eyes. And that newcomer that's staring at your shoelaces, and this. And then pretty soon they're looking at your belt buckle, and then they're looking at you in your eyes, and then the light shows up. They start to get a little bit brighter in there. And that started to happen with me, And right about then, I was getting plugged into all this stuff and, doing all these fun things. And, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling the groove and I think I get it. And I kind of, and so I got a sponsor. And we started working steps right out of the gate. And, we worked steps with a dictionary. I wrote a little bit. We sat on our living room floor. And every couple weeks, this is how I proceeded, step after step after step, just whip through. To dump that baggage, that's how I was taught. Just go, whip through, because you're carrying a lot of stuff when you come here. And she told me to, just let's get through these steps so you can, get some relief. And the first step was like no-brainer for me. I'm like, I had no problem admitting. I bulldozed my way through my life and everybody else's life, I had no problem admitting that I was an addict. I had no problem with that first step, My life isn't unmanageable. I know that. I left havoc. I wreaked havoc everywhere that I went. I had no problem with that. I had a problem with, really? Never use again? Ever? I'm not even 18. What about that birthday? What about 21? I'm like, what am I going to do with it? I just couldn't fathom never using again until somebody explained that that's not what we say here. That's not what we talk about. We talk about just for today, And later I learned about that no matter what club, not using no matter what, staying clean no matter what. So that first step, you know, I once I got past the whole, you know, staying clean just for today versus the rest of my life thing, I was okay with that. Now, you know, there's a principle, you know, all the steps have principles, and the principle of the first step of, you know, is, to me, is surrender. Because I'm also recovering control freak, and the resistance that I can create, you know, I want to fix, manage, and control so much of my life and the events of my life, and just that constant inner struggle, that fighting, is just there so much of the time, you know, and so I learned that first step not only helps me to get clean, to stay clean, but it helps me with so much more, you know. I mean, I was fighting and resisting and struggling with so much of my life until I really started to apply that first step to more than just the drugs, more than just that part of it, you know. And you know, I heard a woman speak one time, and she's like, you know, she started off speaking by saying, if you're still working the program, keep coming back. Today I'm living the program. I'm like, what's the difference? I don't get it. What are you talking about, you know? And what I've learned is, you know, I mean, you know, my knee-jerk reaction is to control, and then, you know, come up with plan B. I like plan Bs. You know, okay, here's plan B, then I move on to plan C, then I eventually get to plan D and F, and, you know, and I keep moving at, you know, I'm gonna manipulate, I'm gonna do all this stuff, I'm gonna make this happen, prevent this from, you know, and pretty soon I'm at, like, plan 18, whatever that is, you know, alphabet letter that is, you know. And so I just keep knocking it back, and eventually I get back to, oh, yes, there's a step for this, you know, and I can use that tool, you know, and I think I'm going to surrender, you know, and eventually that started to become, instead of, you know, solution number 18, it was like solution number 5, you know, and maybe now it's like, you know, maybe I think of it after I try one other thing or two other things, but, you know, it's more of okay, it's morphed into a step that, you know, in other words, the steps just are part of what I do now, you know, instead of doing all my stuff and then remembering, oh yes, I have steps for this, I have tools for this, you know, I understand the difference, I guess is what I'm saying, between working the steps and living the steps, and that was kind of a light bulb moment for me. The second step, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. I didn't know what to think about the whole God thing or higher power thing, or, you know, any of that. And I kind of was quite overwhelmed by that whole concept, whole idea, until I decided to use the group. You know, I decided to believe in what you were doing, what was happening for you, you know, because what I was hearing was, you know, she was getting her kids back, and he got his job, and, you know, he just bought a new car, and, you know, so things were happening in your life. And so I decided to believe that what was happening to you might kind of sort of possibly happen to me too, you know. And so I bought into that whole thing, you know. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go for it, you know. And that was kind of my really simple form of, you know, my first second step. And the interesting thing now, you know, it's so much more than that, but the interesting thing about the second step to me is, you know, it says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That little word is often overlooked, you know, restore. I like to rehab houses, you know, like, what is the name of that? Flip This House, you've seen it? You know, I like to leave the old architecture, gut out the junk, you know, and put in something really contemporary, and it's really fun for me, you know. That's a rehab, you know. And then there's that other show, This Old House, you know, and they're doing the painstaking restoration. They're tearing out, they're putting back the way it was, the way it used to be, right? And so that process, there's a huge difference in those two approaches and those two words, And the second step uses the word restore. So I'm being restored to. It's a process of being restored to what? What I was. Had I never used what I was supposed to be all along, I don't know. But it's just I like that word in there, Came to believe that a power greater than myself, and that power could be anything, It could be the group, it could be my higher power, as I understand it could be, my sponsor, it could be anything. But for me, the tool of the second step is just ask for help. If I've fallen down, reach my hand up. That's my job. My job is not to come up with a solution. My job is not to figure out everything, to have all the answers of the world. My responsibility is simply to reach out my hand. There's a line in the book that says, I think it's in Recovery and Relapse, it says we cannot save our face and our ass at the same time. How that has saved my butt so many times. If that's not a line that an addict wrote, somebody knows their stuff that wrote that, and I that to me is the second step, because I have to ask for help. If I'm gonna, I have to ask for help. And, instead of going, how are you doing, Kelly? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. I'm fine. Back off. I got this, I have to ask for help. And to me, that's what the second step is about, So in the first step, I'm surrendering and I'm not fighting anymore. Stop the fight, stop the resistance movement. That's kind of what I'm doing there. And in 2, I'm asking for help. That's all. Steps are pretty simple, I think. In step 3, it says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore. No, it doesn't. It says, step 3 says we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And, the text says this is a decision to continue. It's a commitment, just like, the No Matter What Club, I'm committed to this thing. I'm going to do that. I'm going to stay clean no matter what, And the third step is asking me to do that same commitment. But I think the most important word in that third step is the word care. So much of my life is about the word care. And, I envision just like a feather in a hand, how do you hold a feather? Just really gently, It's just ever so fragile. And that's what I think of, It's just... And to me, the opposite of the third step is fear, right? Because I know when I'm all jammed up and so into my fear, I need that third step because it's a trust thing with my higher power, with my God. And when I say God, by the way, and I might say he, what I really mean is the universe. He, she, it, I don't care. The one who knows, the great creator, whatever. I really don't care about that stuff, So I say God and he because it's easy. What I understand is something at a much deeper level. But it's much easier to say God and he instead of what I really mean is God, he, she, it, the universe. I don't want to go through all that. But I know what I mean. And what helped me actually get to an understanding of what I really mean is when in between my second and third step, my sponsor had me write a list of, okay, describe whatever you would like. Just make up some higher power. Just make it up. What words, gentle, kind, loving, patient, whatever. Just make up words, write a list. She didn't care how long the list was. 10 items, 20 items, 50 items, 100 items, whatever, I said, okay, I could do that, So I described this perfect higher power that I would love to have guiding my life. And she said, okay, now circle the most important ones, the top 3, the top 10, the top 20, whatever. So I did that. And she's like, okay, now pray to that. That's it? Really? And so I started to do that, and what started to happen was I started to have all these little coincidences, these funky little coinkydinks, happening. I'd pray about something to this made-up higher power, 2 days ago, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see? And I tell people about it. It's like, this happened, and they're like, uh-huh. They don't get it. But that's because that's my personal relationship with my own higher power. That's mine. And it's hard for other people to get it. But when people, like some newcomer says, you'll never believe this, oh my God, wow, man, I just saw this, and the song ended right when I got to the meeting. It was such a higher power thing, like, I get it. I do. I get it. It's a personal relationship. It is whatever you want it to be, and it's perfect. And that's all. That's all. It doesn't have to be the guy in the sky. It doesn't have to be any of that other stuff. It could be whatever I need it to be, And that has changed over and over and over again. It has become deeper, warmer, more perfect for me, And I love that. And that's, I love that. My third step is my go-to step. This is my favorite step. This is the step I go to all the time, because the more I stay clean, the more I realize so much of my reaction is based out of my fear. It's like that old saying, if you pray, why worry? If you worry, why pray? That third step, it's so much about trust, Do I actually trust God? Did I turn my will and my life over why does it say that, by the way? Turn my will and my life over to the care of God. Why does it say will? Why doesn't it just say we made a decision to turn our life over to the care of God as we understood him? Why is will separate? We made a decision to turn our will and our life. I believe that step is inviting me to embrace God's will. Not just go kicking and screaming, It's like, okay, I know you're in charge here, whatever, It's not that kind of thing. Or, when shit hits the fan, can I cuss? Okay, when shit hits the fan, and instead of cowering in the corner, I can get my backbone, And sometimes I can say, okay, I'm going to do this thing. And I can walk through it, standing tall. And when I get to the other side, it's like, oh, that a girl. That was cool as hell. That was cool. And I feel huge. I feel empowered. I feel strong, the whole higher power thing, if anybody's stuck on that, if you look around, anybody that has more than a little bit, just a minute clean, they've got the higher power thing, because I don't believe you can make it if you don't wrap your head around that part of it. It's in the majority of our steps, some kind of reference to a higher power, and I can't, the second step for me was, that principle was about hope, and I can't give myself hope. It's not something I can give myself. It has to come outside of myself, It comes from the group. It comes from my higher power, I cannot give myself that. And so that whole higher power thing, I'm getting hope from 2, I'm getting trust from 3. That's what helps me get it. It helps me make it. Because that dark night of the soul will hit every one of us. And sometimes white knuckling just isn't enough. I have to have something to hold on to. I have to be able to turn the light on. What's going to turn the light on? What's going to turn that light on? For me, it's that higher power relationship. Recently, I used to think when old timers had a lot of clean time, their life was perfect. I'm here to tell you that's a fucking lie. I don't know where that lie started, but that's just flat out wrong. My life is definitely not perfect. I have all kinds of stuff going on, but here's the difference. Like last month, I lost my job. They hired a whole lot of new people, and they let everybody go that was making more money. That's what's going on in today's market, and thank you, Jimmy. And it's a nice one too. So this happened to me, and so I feel like this victim, right? I was devastated for about the first 24 hours. Now, I hated this job. And I had been praying my butt off for a while and writing about it and praying about it, and I got over the resentment, and I worked through all of that, and I got over my impatience, and I got over beating myself up, and come on, get in the game, Kelly, come on, you can do it, get a new job, come on, what are you sitting around for, all that stuff, and I kind of worked through all of that, and I got to the place that I was being real gentle with myself, and I was being real patient, and then that happened. I'm like, really? And I was devastated for about the first 24 hours. And then the next day, this happened on a Monday, Tuesday afternoon, about the time that it happened, I'm like, okay, really? You prayed for this. You asked for this. This is what you wanted. What are you so upset about? I was praying for, the chance to, because I had owned my own businesses before. I had my own business. I was thinking about starting something. How do I do that? How do I make this happen? So I was writing all kinds of stuff about freedom and, and where do I, how can I think, work out this, making this happen. I was talking about all this stuff. And then this happened. I'm like, okay, this is not what I had in mind, but okay, we'll go with this. But this is what I prayed for. I created this, so to speak. I wanted this at the very least. So instead of cowering in a corner, it's like, okay. That third step gives me, I know historically speaking that I can count on that higher power because I can't see the forest for the trees. I don't know what's coming down the pike. I don't know all the time what I think is best for me, which is where my control freak thing comes in and, anything but that. Or I have to have this and life is going to fall apart if I don't have this, And what I know is that I don't know everything that's going on. And I can trust my higher power and embrace what is coming and say, okay, you better be here now. I assume you're in charge here. Because I do not know what's going on, and I'm definitely not in charge. So that third step helps me get through that. Because otherwise I would fall apart. I would start running around, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Yes, little one, the sky may be falling. But what can you do to prevent that? Nothing. And so I'm stuck with, I either accept it and embrace it and be gentle with myself, or I fight and resist and get knocked back to that first step where I have to surrender all over again. So, and I'm all for, the text talks about happy, joy, and free. What the hell is that? Gibberish, I don't even know what they were talking about. Happy, joy, and free. My sponsor's all about looking up the words in the dictionary. I'm like, okay, joy, okay, happy, okay, okay, I get it. I didn't understand what those things meant. I didn't experience those. I didn't know those things. But I would get periods. I would get little glimpses of feeling happy. And I would get little touches of joy periodically. And I decided one day I didn't want to visit those places anymore. I want to live there. How do I do that? How do I stop touching joy and visiting those happy places and points of my life, a couple times a year? How do I move there on a permanent basis? I want somebody to show me that. And the only way I know to get there, the only way I know to get to that happy, joyous, and free place, get to that happy point, is to learn how, wrap my head around this whole God thing, learn how to trust God. Get with that, because that gives me relief. My monkey chatter makes me nuts. And when I can stop listening to that, and I just go, I have one thought flies through my head, and I have all these supporting thoughts. You're right, she was lying, and she did this, and and they're doing this, and they're scheming again, and bizarre stuff is created up there. And then I have all the supporting evidence that I create, right? And pretty soon I have an entire story that has just taken place. You know nothing about any of it, And now I'm pissed at you because of the stuff that just happened all in my head. And I'm convinced it's all real. And, and so I go off on these stories and, this stuff. And so I've learned to start to challenge myself. It's like, okay, bring it back. Bring it back to this moment. Bring it back. Where's the peace? Where's God? Where... And so I'm trusting, I'm challenging I'm trusting less those thoughts, and I'm trusting more just getting rid of that and bringing it back to trusting God. And that has brought me to that happy, joyous, and free place so much more, because I'm not listening to that crap. That stuff is scary up there, that monkey chatter. I've seen that stuff take people out. They just, you can. I have a friend of mine that says you can be too smart for for this program. It'll take you right out the door. It'll walk you right out. And I don't want to listen to it anymore. How do I turn that stuff off? So, the whole trusting God thing, it's not a small thing as far as I'm concerned. It's everything. The fourth step, my first fourth step was a very historical kind of thing and very negative. And what I've learned about the fourth step is that any kind of inventory is a balance of, the assets and the liabilities. What's interesting about the language of our fourth step is it talks about a moral inventory. Now, I didn't want anything to do with any kind of morality because that's got that religious connotation to it. And, I really didn't believe, when I was on the streets, I used no matter what it cost me, no matter what the consequences, no matter what price, no matter who I hurt, I used no matter what. And, the moral, I didn't think I had any morals. I didn't think I believed in anything. I didn't think that I stood for anything. I just used, that's all I knew. When it came to this fourth step and that whole moral issue, when I looked up the word moral, it says value. So I understood that. What are my values? And so when I work, my fourth step, and for example, when I do a fifth step with somebody, I'm listening for what they're telling me and what they're not telling me. Because if I have a sponsee say, well, I have a resentment against her because she told something else about, me, and, so there's like this whole gossiping thing, and, well, what do I know? I know that the resentment, she's really hurt, and what's behind that? Well, there's, lots of fears, fear of, people pleasing, and, fear of, all kinds of stuff, fear of, judgment, fear of, whatever, people pleasing, all that other stuff. And so but on top of that, I know that she values honesty, right? And she values loyalty and integrity. But to take it that step further, not only do I now know what she values, but I know that those are now her values. Those are her values. So by extension, in order for her to be happy, she now has to live in that integrity and be honest and loyal and, and have integrity with what she does. And so I think that's the whole point of the fourth step combined with the fifth step is to kind of connect those dots and look for that stuff, what is being said, what is not being said, because I didn't know about the values. I didn't know how important they were. There's a saying that says if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I didn't know where my line in the sand was, It was like a pendulum, I swung from I'm a doormat, to, the other end, which was, here's my shotgun, and now I have to shoot your head off because you crossed some line, some invisible line that you didn't even know of, but now I'm pissed because of all those thousands of others that have done the same thing to me, and now you have to die, And that is what my lack of understanding of my values have done, made me extremely reactionary. Either you can walk all over me or now you got to die. And those two extremes are what, I don't have to do that anymore. If I know my values, then I can understand where I stand on things, and I can understand where my sense of integrity is. And being authentic to myself, who am I? What makes Kelly happy? Because when I stand on my values, when I have that sense of integrity, which I can't get if I don't have the information. If I'm not working the steps, I don't know who I am and what I stand for. If I'm not working the steps, I don't have that kind of information. But when I get that information, now I know. And I am not responsible for my disease. That's what I learned from my first step, from my fifth step, from my ninth step. I'm not responsible for my disease, but I am responsible for my recovery. I am responsible for my recovery. And once I have the knowledge, I have choices, and I'm responsible for those choices. So if I know that I value honesty and loyalty and integrity in my relationships, then I must act with that. I must. Because if I don't, I'm not going to get to that happy place. I'm not going to get there. I can't get there. How could I possibly get there? Because my entire life I spent as a chameleon. I was who you wanted me to be, What was your favorite, what's your favorite color? People would ask me, I don't know, who cares? What the hell? I don't care, green, blue, pick one. I don't care. I couldn't tell you my favorite eggs, scrambled, green eggs and ham. Who cares? I don't know. What's yours? Let's go with yours. I don't know. I had no sense of me whatsoever. None, I didn't know who I was in here. So that fourth and fifth step helps me get not only my values, but my sense of who am I? Who's in here? Who is in here? And what does it take for me to get to that happy place and stay there, not just visit it once or twice a year, not just visit it periodically. My sixth step, I had no problem with my first sixth step. I wanted to sign up for that evangelical guy that was just going to demon out, that kind of. That's what I wanted. I wanted the stuff burned out, cut it out with a spoon, carve it out. I don't care. Get it out. Get it out now. I was so sick and tired of hurting people, of hurting myself. I was just over myself. And, the sixth and seventh step remind me so much of 1 and 2, because for 6, it feels like that same surrender all over again. And 7 is that asking for help, help me now. And the sixth step, I hit a bottom when I had about 5 years clean. And with my sixth step, and I just thought that I just had this meltdown. I was so sick. I wanted all of it gone right the F now. I just right now, right here, I just want it gone. And I checked myself into, they don't have these anymore, but I checked myself into this 28-day kind of sort of treatment program for people that were in recovery, so to speak. And so I checked myself in, and I'm like, I want the Cadillac version. I want. Sign me up, just burn it out, carve it out, I don't care. And what happened was, and they did that, and it was such a new program that they didn't know how to build me back up. And so what happened was, I found out that, I have a creek in the back of my yard, and there's kind of brush that holds up the side of my, the hillside. And if I tear out that brush, my hillside collapses into the creek. And that's what happened when I went there. It's like they tore everything down, didn't build me back up, and I walked around like a zombie for about 18 months. It was like the lights were on, nobody was home. And so that's why I think that it's so, so, so important to talk about assets and values with people that I sponsor. Because we have to have a positive foundation. My club is so big, I beat myself to a pulp all the time. I don't need more negative stuff, more negative information. I need positive stuff, That 8 and 9 step, the 8th step is about, forgiveness, and the 9 is about healing, right? So, and I'm told I need to hurry up, so we're going to whip through here a little bit more. The 8th and 9th is about forgiveness and healing, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to get that. And my shame was overwhelming. I didn't even know that there was a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is for an event, right? I stole your wallet, dude, I'm sorry, That's what guilt is. Shame is that stuff that I tell myself 1,000 times over that. I'm a thief, I'm no good, I'm dishonest, I'm a liar, I can't be trusted, I'm not worthy of anybody to love me, I don't deserve a promotion, that's shame. All those messages in my head, all that crap rolling around in my head, that monkey chatter eats me up. And I have learned, as I said, to not listen to that so much. Now, forgiving myself, I think, is one of the most important things that I can do. making amends to myself. I mean, I'm harder on myself. I was more abusive to myself than anybody out there could ever be to me. And sometimes, one time I did a 9-step and I was talking about what would God say to me? So I pictured me sitting knee to knee with God. What would God say if it were a guy and he could sit there in front of me? What would he say? I think he would say, "Oh, honey, you're so hard on yourself. I would never say or do those things to you that you've done to yourself. I'm just so hard on myself." And so my amends is not just, living with integrity and authenticity to myself, because I don't think I'm here to, be, to be reactionary. Like, so much of my point of view of my life is, what are you going to do? What are you doing? He's going to do this, and so therefore I have to decide based on what's going on. It's like, no. So I've learned to look inward, and that's part of my 9-step, look inward and go, who am I? And what's in here? What do I need? And then move through the world from that point of view. And that has changed my life. That has changed so much because it no longer matters what you're doing. And really, when I'm doing what's right for me, as long as my intentions are good and all of that, when I do what's right for me, 100% of the time, it's right for everybody else involved anyway. So that 9-step, and then also, there was a movie, The Bucket List, probably most people know that movie, and that bucket list was interesting for me because, this guy was about to die, and he came up with these things, and he started to do it. It's like, why do I have to wait to die, or almost be on my deathbed to start doing that? So I've started to kind of knock down, those things. And I have traveled, I have seen so much in NA. I've gone to world conventions, all over the globe. It's cool stuff, and I've seen people, their countries are fighting, and they may be crying and hugging and doing cool stuff together. And this stuff is just, it's so cool. It's, getting plugged into Greater NA and seeing what this program offers. There's so much magic that happens here if people just give it a chance. But that bucket list is part of that. I want to see things and do things and go places and meet really cool people, that are doing really cool things. And that's just off the chart, cool as hell for me. I mean, I just love that. And also do things that I want to do, my sense of creativity, embracing that and not kind of squelching it down and hiding it, and my, sense of spirituality and stuff. My 10-step, I write every single morning, to dump some of that monkey chatter, which has helped me really, really get clarity. And my language has changed. I no longer use the word should, I should do this, or I want to, Instead I say I will, I am, And my language has really changed. And I do this dumping thing in the morning, 3 hours, or 3 pages every single, or most mornings. And that has helped me. It's kind of a 10-step, 10, 11 kind of thing. And, the 10-step in the evening, I ask myself, have I acted out of fear or faith today? Have I acted it within my values and sense of integrity that I learned about in 4 and 5? Because I don't want to get out my shotgun again and try to blow somebody's head off, I have to keep in balance and I have to keep in check, and that's to me what 10 is about. I used to think 10 was about how big does my club need to be today? How did I screw up today? And now I ask myself, what did I do right today, My 11th step is, the words for the 11th step, it says we sought through prayer and meditation. We're seeking, not through books, not through some other place, not through, we're seeking specifically through prayer and meditation, and we're praying only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry it out. I'm praying for knowledge and power, that's all. And the 11th step is my second favorite step. I just love that. My home group is an 11-step meeting, and it feels so much like this fireside meeting in Ripley, it just has that same vibe, and everybody just gets really real and really raw, and, because the lights are down and the candles are burning, and it's just good stuff. And I used to think meditation was like granola bars and incense, and it just doesn't have to be that. I think meditation is anything that keeps me in the moment. You know, I have learned a lot about meditation, but I also know that when I'm skiing down a hillside and the snow is blowing, I'm totally in that moment. And when I'm working on a favorite art project and I'm so absorbed in it and I don't even know the time that has passed, I'm totally in that moment. You know, when I'm up at Lake Erie and the wind is blowing and the sun is shining and I just feel really low-key, you know, just, you know, really calm, I'm totally in that moment. Anything that can bring me back to that moment, to me, I think, is a form of meditation. So if I can't do the cross-legged thing and the granola and incense, you know, whatever gets me there, whatever can bring me back to this moment, because that's, to me, where God is. God is in that moment. And that's when I can see that little coincidence stuff, that, you know, quinkadink, and, you know, that stuff is cool. And I can't pay attention to that if I'm not in this moment. If I'm caught up into tomorrow and yesterday and, you know, all my monkey chatter and believing that story and going with it and all that stuff, I'm just, you know, I'm all lost and caught up in the monkey chatter. But when I can bring it back to this moment, okay, Kelly, you know, you lost your job. Are you okay right now? Bring it back, you know. Are you okay right now? Your kids have food, you know, the house is warm, you have clothes on your back. I'm okay right here, right now. And that's where I can find that peace. And that 11th step helps me get there. You know, the 3rd step kind of starts that process, that 11th step, you know, which is at the end of the steps, you know. It's conveniently at the end of the steps. So I'm not doing it right out of the gate. I'm doing it much later, you know. I'm kind of going back to that relationship, and I'm, you know, getting a lot better at that and seeking again. But that step has really helped me a lot in the tools from it as well. The 12th step, my first spiritual awakening, you know, I worked through the steps pretty quickly my first year, and it wasn't until about 9 or 10, you know, my 9th or 10th month, 9th or 10th step, that I had my first spiritual awakening. And what happened was, it was like a light bulb moment. And what happened was, I understood. It's like I felt at home here. I felt at home here. I was at home, and I felt me, and, you know, I was so used to being a performer, you know, looking outside of myself, and I understood what I was doing here. It's like I don't have to show off or show up, you know, because I was showing off for my dad and showing up for the judge. I don't have to do any of that anymore. I felt me at home in here, and I didn't have that sense of authenticity. I didn't have that sense of self whatsoever my entire life. This was the very first time in my entire life that I felt that. That was my first 12th step, and that was incredible, you know. So I had been showing up all those months and didn't understand why until, you know, they say don't leave 5 minutes before the miracle happens. I didn't know why I was showing up till I got it. The day I got it, it was like, I get it. I understand now. I know what I'm doing here. I know what I'm getting out of this thing. Ripley has been a very meaningful place for me. I've met so many people here. The relationships that I've built, just some of them started at that fireside meeting. And, you know, when I try to talk to a newcomer or talk to a sponsee, in my mind, my motivation is, you know, I ask myself, how do I inspire somebody? How do I light that fire in their belly that I was given? You know, how do you show somebody unconditional love really to the point that they actually see it, they feel it, you know? And that is, it's hard to do, but when you can do it, when you know you've touched somebody, when you know that you've really affected somebody, that's cool stuff. And I have to tell you, I have had that happen so many times in this program, and a lot of it has happened here at this convention. So this convention has been a really warm place in my heart. And I know I've run over, so I'm going to cut it off there. Thank you so much.